So you understand, we are brought together as a union of sovereign states. We are to self-govern within our own states. The federal government is not to extend authority past what we grant to them in the Constitution. So, fusion centers. What are they? Well, I'm going to step you through the process in which I learned about fusion centers so I can take you on that journey with me. I think it's the easiest way to understand what they are. On March 6th of last year, I woke up to a phone call, someone telling me a report has been issued by the Missouri Highway Patrol that says we all should be considered, I was told at the time, terrorists, because I think that's what Alex Jones was reporting, but it actually did not say that. It said that it was a report issued to all Missouri law enforcement, additionally to law enforcement around the country, that said people who were supporters of Ron Paul, Bob Barr, Chuck Baldwin, people who are members of Campaign for Liberty, people who are concerned about RFID tracking technology, people who didn't want a North American Union, people who are upset about the IRS or the Federal Reserve, basically every single issue and person in this room were listed as potential indicators to law enforcement that they might be dealing with a radical violent militia member. Okay? They didn't come right out and say you might be dealing with a terrorist, but they definitely implied that if you walk up on a car that has a Gadsden flag or a Ron Paul bumper sticker, you might be dealing with someone who will initiate violence against you. And it actually says in this document, keep in mind this is issued to law enforcement, it says you are the enemy. That is what is being told to law enforcement through this report. Now, I didn't know what MIAC meant. I didn't know what a fusion center was, but I dove right in and started doing as much research as possible. MIAC stands for Missouri Information Analysis Center. It is one of 4 Department of Homeland Security fusion centers in the state of Missouri. There are currently 72 across the nation, and as of January, congratulations New Hampshire, you're number 73. Woo! Now, when I came out here last year for PorkFest, you guys did not have a fusion center, and I didn't know how to look into finding out if y'all had one in the process, and unfortunately in March of last year, your House voted the name of the bill, if you want to write it down to look it up for those who are New Hampshire residents, it's HB 587. It was passed by the House on 3/24/2009 and passed by your Senate on January 21st, 2009. So, again, I didn't know what a fusion center was. I didn't know what MIAC was. I started doing research. And what I learned through the process of fighting the report in the state of Missouri is that these institutions were created after 9/11. The legislative authority that grants DHS the authority to create these institutions is a piece of legislation called the 9/11 Implementation Act of 2007. And this piece of legislation is what gives the legislative backing to the 9/11 Commission report. It is your government saying the recommendations provided by the 9/11 Commission report are now going to be enacted into law. And so, interestingly enough, these fusion centers had become Department of Homeland Security policy in 2005. So I'm sure you see the disconnect here. The U.S. legislature voted on them in 2007, but DHS was already implementing them in 2005. So like so many things that are happening in our country, they are actually being acted out before they are given the legislative backing. Now their intent was information sharing, both horizontally and vertically. So if you remember, right after 9/11, they were talking about all the problems with communication that they were having. And that was the sole reason that DHS was created, right? To facilitate communication between all the different agencies and departments so that they could better respond to disasters and crises. So these institutions, which were designed to share information, in essence, you think, well, that's pretty harmless, right? They're just talking to each other, they're just sharing information with each other. Now, when you consider that not only are they sharing information as low as your campus police department, but that information is being sifted up as high as your federal government, your DHS, your FBI. It's being sifted up to Interpol. It's being sifted to other foreign governments and private corporations. This is an information sharing network that is being developed. It doesn't just go up and down. It doesn't just go right and left. It is literally a virtual spider web. So, immediately we responded to the MIAC report. And we put a ton of pressure, and a lot of you here were a part of that. People from all over the country started demanding answers from Missouri, because if they were allowed to do this in Missouri, this could happen anywhere. And the report was retracted, which was huge. Thank you guys for helping with that. The head of the MIAC was removed and moved to another department. And there were 4 legislative hearings that were held on the issue. So I was able to sit down in front of the Missouri legislature 4 times. And I used each of those hearing dates as an opportunity for me to do as much research as possible that I could then present to my legislature. And we really went through a learning process together. I sat down and I studied all the different databases that they're using. I sat down and I studied all the different places that they're sharing information, as well as all the instances of fraud, abuse, and misuse. I encourage you to get online and check out a 1993 Government Accountability Office audit on the NCIC database, which is the FBI's main database. A lot of these fusion centers, most of them, I can't say all because we haven't visited or spoke with all of them, do have access to the FBI's NCIC database. Now, this database has about 12 different tracks. That's where you're going to get your fingerprint records. You're going to have your terror watch list, your no-fly list. There's all kinds of different databases that are held within it. And if you read this 1993 Government Accountability Audit, keep in mind this is before Homeland Security. This is before the technology really started being ramped up. They had 56 instances that they spotlighted in this audit where information was either sold for profit, it was used for political ammunition against a political candidate or person. It was used, for example, there was a woman whose boyfriend was a drug dealer and she was running new customers' names through the database to find out if they were FBI agents. So these databases, which at the time, this is in 1993, there were 500,000 authorized direct and indirect users to this database. 500,000 people inputting information and accessing information. Do you mean to tell me that that information is accurate? I don't think so. Now, as I kept researching and finding about all of these instances of horrible things that have come out of the now fusion centers, it starts with the databasing before these fusion centers were created. But the fusion centers themselves have a lot of problems. In Washington, Seattle, Washington, their fusion center, which has a Boeing staff member who sits on staff, you like that? You like it how Boeing has access to information that you and I don't? Well, they had a fusion center staffer who infiltrated an anti-war group for 2 years, worked within their inner cadre, sat there at their side at planning meetings when there were only 4 or 5 or 6 people there. And the only reason they found out was through the open records request process, and they realized an email that they recognized was corresponding with that fusion center and giving information about their organization and their activities. Lo and behold, they were using a different name, and they had been sent there to infiltrate this group.